Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. It is a podcast about learning to fly and flying later in life. And this is episode 3 called Flight Training Horror Stories. And we're glad you're here. My name is Chris Moran, also known as the Midlife Pilot on YouTube. And we're glad that you're here for episode 3. If you are with us tonight, it's being recorded on Wednesday, November 3rd. If you're here live in the YouTube or Facebook chat, make sure you say hello, leave some comments. We're going to get to a lot of your interactions as we get going here later on tonight and talking about some of your flight training horror stories. But before we get too far into that, I would be remiss if we did not welcome in the better half of the Midlife Pilot Podcast and a very fresh new Midlife Pilot, Brian Siskin. Hello, sir.
Quite a stretch, but I like the intro. More superlatives, find them if you can. But I'll take that. That was fantastic. Yeah, man, how's it going? We've actually had to try really hard to not do our sort of small talk and chit chat and sort of catch up. We can do it now for everyone, because I know you have some recent flights and some recent goings on that you want to sort of talk about. And I would like to get to that before anything. But it's great to be here, and I hope everybody's been enjoying it so far. I certainly have, and it looks like the audio only audience is starting to sort of pick up. All the syndications starting to get out and everything. So it's cool to just start something new and see what happens. Maybe there's more people like us, and I guess there are.
For sure. It is cool. And I've been tracking that as well. So if you haven't yet had a chance to grab it on your podcast provider of choice, it is pretty much everywhere now. Just search Midlife Pilot Podcast and subscribe. Like it, of course, and leave a comment if you want to. We're going to add a segment here as we get going with some podcast reviews as we get going through as well, and be reading those on the podcast is coming up. So yeah, it's been I got to fly some on Monday. That's what I was going to do. I was going to see if I could figure out how to easily share my screen with everybody here.
It had been a minute, right? You said it had been about a month. Is that right?
It had been. And so I hadn't been getting out very much. There's a new video coming out next week that is Cecilia and I flying locally here at sunset. It was pretty nice. Fall leaves in West Virginia, they're pretty much peak in some areas right now. So it was super nice. So we got to do that here. But just this week on Monday. So I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of this story as to not bore everybody to death with this, but we have a flying club here. My Cherokee is in it. My Cherokee's in the club. We have a 172 that you saw most of my training in, which was the 3852 Lima. It has been out of service for 2 months now, practically. I had a goose strike. One of our members hit geese on landing. And so we have been trying to find parts to make the repairs and whatnot that we've needed to do. Well, we have finally, we found the little, the wing, what are they called? They're just like the little spacers that the actual leading edge sheet metal attaches to, and that's a specific alloy aluminum, that they make the leading edge out of. Could not find a leading edge for this wing, and so we are with our AMP. We found the appropriate alloy, but the nearest place I could find the specific aluminum was in Toledo, Ohio, which is like, a 5.5 hour drive effectively from here, or a 2-hour flight roughly in the Cherokee. Well, I needed a 2-foot wide by like 8-foot long piece of this aluminum. So I went up with a tape measure to the Cherokee. I'm like, oh, I can kind of get it through the door. If I bend it, it's going to be like making this arc and go all the way back. Not like bend it to crease it, but like smooth bend. Anyway, long story short, I flew the Cherokee to Toledo, picked up this sheet metal, and I want to show you just a couple pictures. Let's see if this works. Is that sharing? That would be the question. All right. Yeah. So there's a look of the trip. That was part of my trip to Toledo, which was super cool. And let me show you a picture of the sheet metal because it is hilarious. This is it in the back of a van. So that is like a full size van. But I managed to get it back to Fairmont, and took it to a place, and we're working on getting it bent. with the appropriate shape of the, the leading edge and stuff. So that was an exciting trip. I got to make on Monday. It was about 35 knot tailwind coming back at 7,500 feet. So it took me like an hour and 25 minutes back. It took me 2 hours and 5 minutes there. But it was just a great time by myself, like some cross country flying and like, navigating clouds as you saw there. And so it was a good experience.
Wow. So you were sort of on a rescue mission, or people always talk about you should have a mission, right? Or whatever. So there was a mission. You're like, this has got to happen and I've got to get to Toledo. My flight club depends on me right now.
Exactly. So that was pretty exciting. Got to do that this week, and still haven't got my first instrument lesson in. We're still working to get that started, but that was a good, 3.5 to 4 hours log there on Monday with the mission. So it was a pretty good experience. What about you? Have you been? I keep following you on social media. It looks like you've been flying.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. I have a friend in town right now from LA, so I took him up for his first ride in a general aviation aircraft. Just a nice sunset flight. Nothing terribly exciting, but it's always interesting, right? Like, it doesn't matter how pedestrian the flight is or non-eventful it seems to be. There's always something you get out of it. And for me, it was, our airport is completely under construction and changing constantly. And the flight school planes get put in all these different places all the time. And for this one, it was deep in sort of the forest of hangars, and all the construction had it. Like, I would go down to the end and realize it's blocked off, have to do a really tight 360, come back down, try the other way out, have to do another 360. I spent about half the time taxiing, just trying to get in and out of where the plane was supposed to be. So that's part of the pleasures and pains of being in a growing, rebuilding airport. But other than that, the flight itself uneventful and really nice. He's looking to relocate back here, and so we actually kind of got to use it as recon to sort of go and get a sense of some of these areas out west of where we are here in Nashville, and where he's looking, and like, oh, what's near that water, or that forest looks nice, or whatever, and helped him with his house search a little bit, but ultimately just kind of hanging out, nothing crazy.
That's cool.
Yeah,
very cool. Okay, the title of today's episode is Flight Training Horror Stories, and when you sent that to me earlier this week, I started to think back through some of my training and thinking about myself and my own experiences, and I thought, man, I don't have any, I can't think of a lot of massive things that I would consider horror stories, there are plenty of memorable moments. Maybe some of those will be things that have stuck with me, or moments that stood out because they scared me, or they were a really bad experience for my CFI. Maybe I scared my CFI, those kind of things. But I'm curious to hear from you, and definitely curious to hear from everybody who's hanging out in the chat tonight, some of their training horror stories that they can leave in there, and we'll get to those too. But what about you? Do you have things that come to mind from your training?
I mean, I think everybody's got different experiences, obviously, and a horror story to that level of term. Some people really actually have horror stories. I don't think that either one of us really have true horror stories. We just have moments where we were upset with ourselves, or difficult on ourselves, or something scary happened, but it wasn't. Some people really have bad experiences or really trying experiences. My experience, I think, that stands out to me, because I was trying to think about it from the perspective of, now that I've got my license, what are the things that maybe still stick with me a little bit, where I still kind of think about it? It's still in my head. And I think that what it was for me was during check ride prep. So all during training, I never had any problem with stalls, no anxiety about it, nothing. I always went fine, always did them fine, never really had to work on them that much. Everything was always just fine with stalls. It was the least of my concerns. Then we got into check ride prep. For whatever reason, I don't know, there's just something about the check ride prep time. You just tense up, I think, I don't know, at least I did. Everything you start to hyperanalyze everything, and you don't have that kind of happy-go-lucky, I get to fly and let me just kind of happen through this, and you're relaxed at least. But I started doing a lot of stabbing kind of movements and a lot of over controlling. And stuff that wasn't really typical. So I can show you an example here of what happened when we were doing some power on stalls. And then we had this moment. It'll start with a what I believe to be the cause. I mean, ultimately, I'm the cause, but it's interesting to go back. Again, we were talking about the value of recording your training. This is really helpful for me, but also it's nice to be able to go back and relive my own trauma. But check this out. This is basically me doing power on stall during a check ride prep. Let's see if you can see it and hear everything, right?
Yep.
So I had just done one and just kind of wasn't staying with the right rudder. And so my instructor's basically telling me, what they always say. So that's me. I'm just like, I've got to try one more, right? I'm sure you were stubborn like this too, Chris. So here's me trying one more and really taking to heart the request for right rudder. All right, so here we go. Look at me. I mean, I'm apologizing. All my tablet flew off. I mean, you can't see, but everything in the cabin of the plane went everywhere.
Wow.
That was actually quite violent. It seems a lot smoother on GoPros, right? But basically, sort of a wing over, borderline incipient spin scenario. And it freaked me out. And the rest of this whole check ride prep, I mean, I was just that sort of tail between your legs, staying with you. Even when I was doing emergency drills later and the landing and just whatever else I was doing, I was so screwed up by that. Because I really was afraid. I mean, it was, even if we got into a spin, I don't have any spin training. I'd like to do it, and I do know what to do. I understand the aerodynamics of it all, but to experience that when you're not expecting it and you realize all of a sudden, it's kind of like if you've been riding a bike all the time on the same route all the time and you never have any problems. And so you just kind of just do it. And then one day, just for whatever reason, the tires just go out from underneath you in an instant. And then you're scratched up on the pavement. Like, what just happened? That's how it felt. It was this kind of jarring experience. So anyway, for me, I have not, like, since my check ride, I've done 0 stalls. I don't do them by myself. I'm actually apprehensive about doing them by myself or with non-pilots or whatever in the plane. And that's probably not rational, but that's what these horror story kind of scenarios can kind of do for you. They can kind of stick with you. So I'm fine, right? Like, ultimately all it was I was not getting slow enough in the power on stall to begin with. And I was taking too long to get into the stall for it to break. So I was just really prolonging the need for this rudder control, and then it breaks and it's just too much. So basically I've finally figured out, just get it really, really, really painfully slow and get into the stall very quickly. And then you're not having to rely on, this insane amount of teetering rudder control for too long. But anyway, that's basically that's my show and tell.
I've showed it before and talked about it before. I think probably my biggest one was that early on in my time with Tyler, we were doing touch and goes like we did from the beginning of training at Clarksburg, and it was probably my third or fourth lesson, and I went full power for touch and go before I retracted any of the flaps. But I mean, just for a minute, like got the power in there just for a second or two, and Tyler's like, well, gotta pull the flaps up. And in just that amount of time, we were still fast enough and there was enough energy that, like, there wasn't much contact with the wheels and the pavement anymore. And so things were sideways and we were kind of like, I felt like we were going to like be in trouble off the side of the runway, and Tyler took over and then laughed at me. And then we went on about our merry way like it was no big deal. But that has stuck with me. I have not even considered ever not bringing flaps up before I mean, that's, you know, not just like doing it, but like looking at each side and making sure they're up, you know, and just like that stuck with me. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever make that mistake. I mean, it's, it scared me. And I guess I'm pretty fortunate.
We have that one in common.
I guess I'm pretty fortunate if that's the, you know, that's the most fear I think I've had, in a training environment. But, yeah, it stuck with me for sure. It just felt out of control. You know, I just felt like there was nothing I could do to get this thing back where it's supposed to be.
So again, I have the same experience, right? The same wheel bearing, wheel barrowing. I forgot the flaps. I do the same thing. It's like, it's actually a good thing, right? Because if you, especially have, you know, motor, right? Like a Cessna motorized, electric flaps. I mean, you want to make sure that, I mean, they're on the same motor. So if there's not going to be asymmetrical relative to the motor, but you want to see it. So I think it's a good idea to be looking and all that. I'm kind of freakishly paranoid about that. I don't even put flaps down in a turn.
I started off that way. I've gotten a little bit sloppy about that. That is a good tip, you know, just in the event that something went asymmetrical, especially to the side that you were banked to, and then you may not have enough authority to get back, you know, over. I mean, I understand the logic. I've gotten just a little bit sloppy, I think, about that. You know, there was one other good, since we're talking about flaps and things that could potentially have been scary. I was with Tyler. We were cross country once, during my training, and we were flying down around the Elkins area, and we lost our it was a generator at that time. We hadn't upgraded the 172 to an alternator yet, so it still had a generator. Lost our generator, and we noticed that with the light on the panel that we weren't making any electricity. So we were on our way back to Fairmont, and you know, we turned like you do. You turn all the unnecessary stuff off, and you try to conserve, you know, battery power and whatever. And as we were coming back into Fairmont, if you've seen enough of these videos, you know, it's about a 3,000 foot strip. It's a little bit of a challenging place to get out of. There's terrain on one end. And, well, anyway, so we're setting up for the pattern, and I'm talking through what I'm going to do, and I'm getting ready to put flaps in. And they're electric flaps, like you say, in this 172. And Tyler said, don't put any flaps in. I said, what do you mean don't put any flaps in? It's like a 2,800 foot runway. I mean, no flaps. He said, what if we run out? What if the battery dies? You got 30 degrees of flaps and the battery dies. You got to go around and we can't get out. Like, don't put any flaps in. So we ended up, you know, there's a no flap landing, but I thought, wow. And that's something else that stuck with me. You know, I thought at that point in my training, that would have not even crossed my mind. The thought that what if you get your flaps out, you get down in that little, you know, valley almost, and then you have to go around, but you can't outclimb the hill at the end, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what a great lesson. Don't have to worry about that in the Cherokee, you know, with the Johnson bar. It's like, that's what I love about those manual flaps. I mean, just get them in and out anytime. But
what, did you negotiate with Tyler for 10 degrees?
I can't remember. We may have. He may have let me do 10. We may have got there. But, you know, I would have just went barreling in there like my normal routine, and who knows? Yeah. So that was I thought that was a good one.
So many little things like that you realize later on. I mean, you know, I'm sure that Tyler said the same thing to you. In fact, I'm sure he did. My instructor did the same thing. There were so many moments where I did things like I had the same flap freak out that you did. You know, better to have those things happen while that's why you train. That, you know, how grateful I was to have somebody just to go, your controls, like, please, in those moments. And it takes a lot now to get to the point where you've made all those mistakes. That's why, like, when people talk about with this kind of bravado, you know, I got my license in 43 hours or whatever, or I soloed in, you know, Chris Moran, 8.4 hours or whatever. But you know, I like teasing about that. But you know, but the whole thing is like, I never think that's a good thing. Maybe that's a midlife pilot thing, right? Like, it's sort of like the bravado of youth makes you proud to sort of, you know, rush through something, I suppose. But in our older age, it's more like, man, that's a lot of mistakes you didn't get to make.
Exactly. Exactly. Important to point out that despite the fact that I may have been scared on a couple of those occasions, Kevin Webb points out Tyler does not get scared, my instructor, which I don't know that I've ever seen him. I don't know that I've ever seen him scared. If he does get scared, he doesn't show it. That's for sure.
He has a Bonanza, right? Is that what you showed one time?
No, he has a. Ooh, I'm going to get it wrong. He bought a. Does he have a? What is his plane? Is this a Tabria? I don't know. He bought an aerobatic plane. It's actually
of course
been down for, yeah. Why not? But it's a tail wheel. He keeps trying to get me to go up and start working on my tail wheel with him, which I want to do. I think that would be super fun. But I'm not a little guy, although his plane can do it. We were trying to go up in the Cub before there. Yeah, it's a Citabria. Okay, it's cool. It's yellow. It's awesome.
Yeah, so I see this here. Somebody was talking about Dan Greider crashed at 150 because his flap stuck at 40 on a go around, and it's like, how many things not to say right now?
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Dan has all the answers, so
there we go.
I'm sure he figured that out.
Yeah.
Sure he solved that one.
But I definitely want to hear other people's stories, so let's get them in here.
Yeah, let's go through some of these. These are great. Let's start here. Fergeek says, in my first cross-country solo in an R22, I didn't account for pattern work at each airport, and 4 miles from home, my fuel light came on. I had to land in a baseball field, and my instructor brought me gas. That's fantastic. BG.
I have a question about that, though.
Yeah.
So when you landed on the baseball field, did you line up like with the bases? Were you running like how far did you have to go? Were you worried about the fence?
Is he talking about is R22? I mean, is he talking about, is that a Robinson helicopter?
It must be.
Yeah. I think he's talking about R22, a Robinson R22. Which makes it a little bit more manageable, I suppose. Actually, a lot more manageable. Stinky Weasel. Stall's definitely my biggest fear block. First time doing it, had a 60-degree bank that made me timid for weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of those things is just about what are you expecting to happen versus what actually happens. And if it's not that a harsh bank is particularly, it can be maybe unnerving sometimes or whatever, but it's just when you don't know that that's what's going to happen.
Right.
And when you're training, you, at least for me, my response was to kind of freeze, which that's what scared me actually the most. I have to be totally straight up about that. Is you want to feel like I understand what's going on. I will respond in these ways or whatever, but under that duress with not complete training under my belt, I really felt the paralysis of just inaction, and that freaked me out. So, but yeah, 60 degrees, that's no joke.
One Dog Geek says, due to a prop strike by someone else in the flight school, I had to switch from a Cessna 172 to a Piper Cherokee for training, which is not spin rated. My first stalls in the Cherokee, I felt like we nearly spin. CFI was like, nah, you're okay. And Adam points out it's very hard to actually spin a trainer, but it doesn't feel like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I mean, that's the thing is like you can know all of these things intellectually, but then when you're starting to careen, you're not thinking about how docile this trainer is. You're like, oh, S.
I'm scrolling down to get, there's a big story. Oh yeah, this is hilarious. Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. I'm going to go through, this is a big long story, but we're going to go through it. Adam says, our aircraft had a very nice Garmin that gave us ADS-B traffic alerts. My instructor and I were out in the practice area when it alerted us to traffic literally on top of us. My instructor took control without a handoff and silently evaded for a few minutes while we both looked everywhere for another aircraft. I was alarmed for a few seconds, but because I work in software, I was less inclined to trust the machines on this. Mm-hmm. He was certain it was a drone, which I've learned is a very common reaction when pilots don't understand what they're seeing. Later, I learned from other pilots this is a TISB Ghost, a radar contact broadcast from the ground that our Garmin could not immediately identify was actually your own aircraft. I still have that happen periodically as well, and it did freak me out the first few times too. And if you've never seen it, it is kind of a weird phenomenon where, your actual ADS-B receiver in your airplane is not only receiving transmissions from other aircraft, but also ground-based delivery from ADS-B towers on the ground. So it's receiving. Well, I shouldn't assume most are dual band, so they're receiving both of those at the same time. And sometimes the ground-based message to your ADS-B receiver, your device just doesn't interpret it properly as your own airship and shows it as another target, and it can freak you out real good the first couple times when ForeFlight comes on and says traffic 6 o'clock. Very close, same altitude, and you're looking on your thing, and it's right on your tail. It's
yeah, or it'll show you 100 feet below you or something. I've had that happen as well. By the way, Adam, so I was looking around for other people that had maybe recorded some flight videos in and around my airport here in Nashville, and I came across Adam's videos flying the same plane that I trained in and rent all the time, and so it's been great to, this is what it's all about for me. Like I said from the very beginning, I've been able to sort of find and connect with a lot of different people because a lot of flight training can be pretty isolating. And so it's nice to sort of have ways to connect with people. So welcome, Adam, and I'm glad to have you here. And he said that he would like to go fly with me after he's done getting used to being a parent. He just had a child. So congratulations, Adam, and we'll see you on the other side. But that's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get the rest of Michael Young is in here. There may be more to this story that we're not seeing. It starts with runway, and I don't think that's right. I think there might be more to that story that we're not seeing.
I guess we don't really have the best format for storytelling. Maybe we should just get him in here.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to start sending links to people who want to join. I guess we could do that.
At our own peril or risk.
Maybe not right now on the fly, but when we plan that out a little bit better, maybe we'll do that. Let's see here. I wanted to point out also that One Dull Geek also has a check ride scheduled officially, a Christmas check ride. He's officially in polish mode. December 8th is his check ride. So that is fantastic. Congratulations on that. Yeah,
that's awesome. And he's got a great airplane too. That he purchased and has been training in, that I've seen on the YouTubes, and it makes me very envious. I would like to one day be one of those people that has an airplane. But congrats. Yeah, get that check ride done. It's the best. It is the best feeling to get that done.
It's always been other people that have scared me as more than myself in many cases. Like, I can think of 3 instances in training when we're talking about, other planes and other people doing things that are unexpected. Like, we had I did a night cross-country flight with Tyler. We went to Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, just outside of Pittsburgh at night. And it was cool, super cool. I don't like night flying. I think I've mentioned before, I don't like to fly. I just don't like the extra risk of not, if you have to land somewhere and you can't see where you're going. But anyway, we were going to Allegheny County, and it was like one of my very first night flights. And there was you can just tell sometimes when you hear people on the radio, like, you already get a bad vibe about this person. Like, if you were to prejudge someone as a pilot just by hearing them on the radio, right? So there was a guy, I swear he sounded like he was 107, and he was in a Bonanza or something. And we were coming left base, pretty much way extended left base for the runway. And this guy was coming on a right downwind. So they were extending him out. He was to follow us. They'd already cleared that guy, number 3 behind us. And so this whole time, we kind of see him as he goes, it's easy to see at night. We see him out there and whatever. Well, he acknowledged that he had seen us, and it took his landing clearance, following the Cessna or whatever. I never saw us because when we landed, we touched down. This guy calls up and says, Tower, Bonanza, so and so. We see traffic on the runway. He's shocked that there's somebody on the runway. And Tower goes, yeah, that's the Cessna you're supposed to be following. He was clueless. He never saw us. He's just out there barreling in on final in his Bonanza as if, following us. But it's that kind of stuff just freaks me out. just other people.
I mean, there's enough reason to be nervous about people that are well-intentioned, knowledgeable people that are naturally actually just confused. That happens. I mean, there's enough concern around that. And then you get into sort of the, whatever, all the hazardous attitude people. But I love the picture of this guy, 107 in a Bonanza. He bought it new. It's just like a 65 and he bought it new.
He's had his whole life. I mean, there's nothing wrong. There's lots of good old pilots, but it's just, you just get that feeling when you hear
he's
him.
A doctor. He's like, this thing hasn't killed me yet. So,
well, why? I guess what it is like, don't acknowledge you cannot accept a clearance to follow somebody and then lose them and then just keep barreling and then be surprised when there's somebody on the runway. Like that just shows a complete lack of awareness of your surroundings and who's where. And that's kind of scary, I think.
That's pretty funny. Stinky Weasel's comment here is pretty funny.
Yeah. His biggest fear is I'll end up on Vaz Aviation for botching a solo flight horribly. Yeah, when that guy gets a hold of your ATC audio and is painting a radar trail of you, you're in trouble.
You've made it to the big time. No, it's funny. Like I feel a certain comfort mostly flying around class Delta, and I don't think a lot of these conversations are being at least publicly accessible. They're not. You can't get it on live ATC. And then once you get into class Charlie, it's like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to do anything. It's not even about doing something stupid with the plane. It's just about being an idiot or just saying something that is so remarkably hilarious to other people. Right. That is me just trying to do a good job. Like I'll Larry David my way into something eventually in that way. But
I think about that. I think about that. Like, especially when you go to, so I'm getting more and more into cases where I'm going to places I've never been, and like used to really freaks me out way less now. Like you do your homework, you look at the airport diagram, you look at you plan your trip, how you do, you figure out what you're doing and whatever. And so I was going to Toledo Executive, which is like this side of Toledo. So it's like, I guess, southeast of Toledo. So you're not in Toledo's Charlie airspace. Like it's still outside of that, and it's a non-towered field with crossing runways. And I was watching it so far out, and I always use my second comm radio to have like the CTAF in there, and I'm listening to it like 50 miles away. Like it's a crazy, just because I can hear, I just like to hear what's going on around me and whatever. There was no traffic. I mean, this airport was dead. And it's also weird. You get out there where it's really flat. Like we're used to West Virginia, like, it's hard to see. I mean, just terrain is obstructing. Well, I was like 30 miles from the airport. I don't know, 20 miles from the airport. When approach said, I was on flight following and said, 20 miles, 12 o'clock, 20 miles, report field in sight. Well, I had it in sight. I was like directly lined up with the main runway, which is not where I was landing. I was going to turn right to a left downwind for the crossing runway because of winds. But I'm like looking for traffic. And as I'm coming in here, I'm thinking to myself, like, I haven't seen another plane. I haven't heard another plane. I've been talking the whole time on CTAF and I'm calling it out. And I'm just like thinking to myself in this unfamiliar space, like turning it down across this airport and I don't see any traffic. I have these thoughts sometimes like is today the day where I end up on making a fool of myself on the internet for like doing something ridiculous. But anyway, I landed at this airport and it was deserted. Like, there was nobody there. It was just, it was nice place. The FBO was super helpful, but like, it was a big airport, like crossing runways and the whole deal. And like grass, it's like you go to the ramp to park and there's like grass growing through the pavement and like,
wow.
It was wild experience.
Yeah. I always have that, anxiety if I'm going to a non-towered field and, cause I trained on a non-towered field obviously, and it was chaos. So there was just something going on the radio at all times. You get out to these remote spots and you just don't hear anything. And you keep checking the frequency. You're like, is this thing on? It makes me so nervous that like, I'm just the only person that doesn't know how to tune a radio that day for some reason. And then I'm just going to come barreling in there. That's the thing that makes me nervous. Cause I don't like the silence. The silence makes me nervous. Yeah.
I did that. I kept checking. I kept looking up I'm like, make sure that that's the correct frequency. And it is. I'm like, this is really weird. There's nobody here.
It's like, this is exactly how the Air Safety Institute videos always start like this. It's something very benign, like a perfect
VFR afternoon when the pilot departed his home field. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Charles Whalen says, I appreciate the name of your channel. Also, one of the videos was so close to, I guess, what I felt when things get in your head. Yeah, I know exactly the one you're talking about. I had a couple of those during training where I just couldn't make myself fly. Ivy says, I feel like Harrison Ford raised the bar pretty high for mistakes when he landed on the taxiway. He's had a handful of pretty major situations here in the last couple of years. In fact, that one was terribly egregious. He crashed on a golf course.
Oh, really? I didn't know there's more.
Oh, yeah. And then most recently, he was given an instruction. Now, there's some debate on the internet whether the instruction was slightly unclear and there was some phraseology maybe that wasn't exactly perfect, but he was instructed to hold short of a runway on a taxiway, and he crossed in front of a landing jet. And it was fine. It ended up fine, but like he was somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. So yeah, there's been a handful of those.
I've always been impressed by that Vast Aviation, or is it wherever the audio comes from, where it's his phone call to the tower after the landing on the taxiway incident. And when they ask him his name, and he just says, just very normally, right? He just says, Harrison Ford. And it's so funny to me that, you can almost tell, like, just by just a small pause, and then the way that he responds, like, okay, it's like the guy was trying to figure out if he was being duped or not. Yeah. No way he didn't know, that name. I would
exactly.
But that's got to be a weird one when you're like, oh, yep, this recording's, again, he just knew the recording was going to be on the internet. But yeah, good on Harrison Ford.
Stephen Caldwell says, I'm both excited and nervous to do my first solo. I feel like I'm ready. And then while I'm with the instructor, I have a few minor slip-ups that I start focusing on and then overthink it. How many times?
Can you leave that one up there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, how many times, right?
Constantly. It's a constant mental challenge. And you should think, it's not like you shouldn't oversimplify flying, but also, it's, you can get in your own head and really screw yourself up pretty good. So that was a big problem that I had. And that just comes with time. That just comes with reps. It's like flying's just like anything else. It's not, except it's so much more fun than so many other things, but it's in terms of like the learning curve and like the comfort curve, it's pretty much like other things, isn't it? The more reps you get, the more comfortable you get, and things don't bother you quite as much.
Yeah, I think also just I try to always, whenever I feel nervous about anything, whether it's flying or just anything, I always try to reframe that to be, like to change my association to that feeling to be something I'm proud of, because it means I'm doing something new. It means I'm doing something beyond my comfort zone. And that is why I'm nervous. So nervous is sort of this indicator, that I'm actually doing something. Like, this is great. So don't fret when you feel nervous. Be excited by the fact that you feel nervous. It's a signal that you're, there's a fine line between nervous and mortal fear. Sometimes I understand, but yeah, that comment, it's like, I want to say that that's a unique point of view, but it's all of us, it's everybody. And some of that stuff doesn't even go away, right? Some of that stuff, it'll come and go. It's just part of the game. It just means you're doing something new.
Yep. Let's see what else we got here. Student Aviator said, great to catch the show. Sorry I'm late. Love what you gentlemen are doing. Thank you very much. We also love what we're doing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's Mike. He's down in Alabama, or no, Georgia. Sorry, and it's all the same, right? And he'll kill me for that. But
those are not my words. Here. But let me put our names back up.
I'm here in Tennessee. What does it matter?
I'm going to put the names back up just so we can remind everybody.
Oh, right. Don't mince words here. But his training experience, we've been kind of keeping up with each other, and it's pretty cool. Like he's been able to, like, whereas I flew in basically one plane, one instructor the whole time, he's had all these different instructors, flown in all kinds of different planes. He's getting quite the experience. So, it just goes to show, and his airport is pretty rural, right? So he can get a lot of laps in the pattern and not a lot of hassle. And and there's, he can go be a hangar rat and all that, you know what I mean? Like, whereas it costs me money every second to be anywhere near my airport, but anyway, I love just how everybody's experiences can be so incredibly different based on where they are.
Yep, for sure. I was pretty fortunate, I think, in terms of horror stories of training. I don't think the most horrible part of training was studying. It's not a horror story, but
a horror story for everyone around you.
Yeah, it was.
People. That's one thing that people don't talk about very much, right? Like, everybody has different environments about, that are maybe more supportive than others for this pursuit. And I was very lucky. My wife is intellectually curious and she kind of studied with me. We went flying with a friend of mine who was just getting ready to start flight training recently. And she was amazed at how much my wife knew about all the things, all the terms, what was going on the radios and everything. And it's just because, like it or not, she's been subject to this. And so it's sort of like embrace it, because otherwise resistance is futile. I
tell you, and along that same line, when Cecilia's flight, the video that's coming out next week, blew my mind a little bit. We were talking about, she was noticing coordination and the ball and was saying things to me. Like I left there telling her, like, when you decide that she is so much further ahead. I said, you're so much further ahead than I was when I started training. She said, well, yeah, I've spent 30 hours in the plane with you already. Like, I know, I've just picked up, but we were talking about why rudder matters. And she's just sitting over there in the seat saying, so yeah. So like, if you're the plane is banked this direction, but this axis is this way. And it's like, she totally, and then this wing is behind the plane, or, she totally understands the concept. So I said, you're going to be, when you're ready to go, you're going to have this down. You're going to have this down when you get started. I
always got a kick out of her response to flaps in your videos.
She still does it. Now I think she's playing. Now I think I think it's her shtick, and I show it every time she does it because she gets a kick out of that. But like she hated the feeling. Yeah. Yeah. I got her good the other day. We were, I don't know if this will make the video. Part of the problem is she's also discovered playing her music selections through the intercom. And so like, I realized after we did like most of this flight, there's a large section of this I'm not going to be able to use because it's just filled with completely inappropriate and copyrighted music. But we were on our way to Stonewall, and I wanted to climb. We were getting ready to turn around and come back the other direction. I was at like 3,500. We wanted to go to 4,500 feet. And so like we had plenty of airspeed, so I didn't want to reconfigure everything so I just gave a little bit more power and like pitched way up. And so we're bleeding off speed. Like I knew what I was going to do when I got there, but like we're bleeding off speed and it's coming down. So we get up to 4,500 feet, and I just pushed the nose, and I just like pushed the nose forward to pick speed up. And it was not a 0G situation, but it was enough where like you could just kind of feel like, ooh. And she's like, oh, no. I said, well, you didn't like that? I did that on purpose. She said, no, don't do that again. I said, okay, well, I thought it was kind of cool, but yeah. None
of the light in the seat feeling for her.
No, she's not a fan. Flaps do it to her too. She doesn't like those sensations.
So your wife was a trooper on your big trip, and I enjoyed those videos. And those are the people that keep us safe, right? She's watching out for stuff. She's not, a passive passenger.
No, she certainly doesn't like it yet. It's not, she's not enjoying the time in the plane like my daughter. But she's definitely observant. Like she caught a couple things. Not all of these made the non-patron videos, but she caught we have a JPI that freaks out on the ground, an engine monitor that like when it gets low voltage, it resets, and it was flashing before we left. And, but we were just taxiing on the runway to take off at Lewisburg, and she's like pointing at that thing with huge eyes. I'm like, no, that's okay. I mean, that one does that sometimes. And then she asked me on the way back, she was just noticing the carb temp gauge. It spends a lot of time in the danger arc, and that's normal. Just that's where the temperature lives. And she's like, "Is our carb temp okay?" I said, "Well, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. Especially in the Piper, it's no carb heat unless it's needed. Indications of carb ice, which is a weird thing. You train in the 172, right? And it's like anytime you're under whatever it is, 2100 in our plane, like carb heat on, and The Piper, it's never on. Yeah, you never use it, which took me a little while to feel okay with. But it's by design.
Well, you spent so much time being nervous about carb heat that now the Cherokee's kind of taken that away from you.
I did. That was one of my carb ice was one of my big fears.
I mean, it's legit. I mean, it's anything that keeps the engine from running is something to be aware of.
Let's see here. Yeah. Stephen Caldwell, in my skydiving days, we used to ask the pilot to do 0G maneuvers. It's such a fun and weird experience. Yeah. It is pretty cool. Well, that's what I've got, Brian. What about you?
Well, so I guess
you want to fill up an hour, don't you? We got to be consistent and have a 60-minute podcast.
No, I mean I can play some beats.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
No,
here, Brian,
no.
Okay, are you gonna do it on the way out for us? We're gonna have
This is it's going to trend in the wrong direction. This is not where this needs to go. Like we have a good thing going, and we don't need to let my exceedingly nerdy vanity into this in some way that will just cause problems. But I wanted to point out though that who was it here? It was One Dull Geek. He's just talking about how your interactions with your daughter are some of the best parts of your channel. I fully agree. When I was on one of your first chats or whatever, I was just like, it was like meeting a celebrity. Like she was there, and it was like, it was the coolest thing. I'm her biggest fan. My wife's a huge fan. We're just huge fans. Like she's got the thing, right? Like she's got the star quality. So how are you going to, as a father, isn't it like important to sort of keep her grounded, or does she know that she's a star yet?
I think but she's completely, that is her complete authenticness. Like she's not she's not making anything up for it, and people call her out. I mean, I don't publish every comment that comes in because, on two fronts. I don't publish some of them that want to talk about like, your wife or your daughter's incredibly bored, like my favorites, like they should smile more.
Those
are the ones that make me want to just reach through the internet and like wring someone's neck and break it. Yeah. So I don't publish everything that comes in, but like that is, if you've not been around like a teenage girl lately, that is the vibe, like that's the mode. Nothing is overly big and excited. Not, you know what I mean? Yeah.
It's not cool to be excited about things at a certain age. No. Like I don't know if you were like this. I remember being at the, this is really good podcast material, by the way, but I remember being at the mall with my family, when I was maybe in 8th grade or something, and doing the thing where like you're trying to walk like 6 feet behind them. Like you're fully with them. It's right. No one's going to mistake that. Like I drove myself there. I'm still like obviously a kid, but for whatever reason, like that differentiation, individuation stuff has to happen as a kid where you're like, I've got to separate myself from this clan and figure out who I am. So the best idea I have, 12 years old is like, I'm going to walk, 8 feet behind my family. Like I'm here by myself. So, there's every age has its phases like that, but I never thought that she was bored. I think that there's a lot of people too that are, it's a lot to take in, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so people have different responses, and to be unnecessarily or giddy or overly excitable for, that's not really, I mean, I think she's just sitting there and I just see her as like, she's just taking everything in, and clearly she's picked up all of that. And I don't see her as disinterested. And that's a ridiculous, the smile more thing. Oh goodness. Yeah. Flare too high.
Geeks. Yeah. Oh yeah. I've been there. Fergeek said I flared too high on my check ride and dropped it on the runway hard. Thought my DPE was going to fail me for sure. He wasn't happy, but let me continue and said, don't do that again. I had a joke with, I cut so much, just full transparency. I cut some stuff out of the, Oshkosh trip. Of course, it was 5 hours each way, so it wasn't all going to make it. But like, Cody and I had nicknames for each other, and by the end of the trip, he called me Roundup because in that Cherokee, I kept, and I still have a tendency to be high, and flare. The good news is I'm always too fast as well, so I have plenty of time to like fix that problem. But I was,
Roundup.
I was Roundup because I was always rounding out up above the runway.
Is this more of a Cherokee thing?
Yeah, it has to do with, I'm still convinced it just has to do with getting used to the difference, how it looks, to me, in the 172 versus the Cherokee. The last few, and here's another thing that it led to it was, these guys are going to, if Kevin and some of these guys are still here, they're going to mock me for this, but like, the yoke, it was sticky, where it goes into the panel, and it just needed cleaned and lubricated with some special stuff.
Oh, God.
Well, listen.
God.
It was to the point where like you
kidding.
would round out and you could let go of the yoke and it would stick where it was. Like you had to push through it to get it to be like where it was. And so I was just fighting that. And see, Kevin's laughing. But it changed. Since I fixed it before our trip to Lewisburg, I've been in a much better place with it. So
grease for greasers.
That's right. The yoke can't be sticking.
So there's a lot of skydiving conversation going on here. What's happening with this? 500 jumps.
Some of these guys are crazy.
I've done 3.
Have you really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was 30, I did the AFF program and made it 3 jumps into it and then quit because I had to go all the way to Atlanta Skydiving Center. And I mean, I just didn't have the gusto to finish it. But my whole thing was like, I'm not going to jump out of an airplane strapped to some hungover hippie dude that wishes that I was the hot girl of the group, or whatever. Like I'm going to take the advanced free fall course and I'm going to like, my thing is like, and I imagine a lot of people here are like this. I want to know as much about what I'm doing as possible. I don't want to just trust and just, so especially jumping out of an airplane. So the wild thing about doing the FF program is that your first jump, you have to kind of run the skydive with 2 coaches, and then they jump out and they kind of hold you so you're stable. So when you're, in free fall, you're not just all over the place. And you do a couple of things you have to do for that to pass that level, and then they separate from you, and then you wave off, and then you pull. So my thing was I waved off and I pulled at about 5,500 feet, and I'd never been under a canopy before. I'd never been under a parachute. And so it opens up, all of a sudden things are super quiet. And they had already showed you aerial photos of the airport and how to recognize where you were. So the chute opens up and I'm looking around. I don't see the airport. And I kind of turn around this way. I don't see the airport. I come around this way. I'm looking. I'm like, oh my God. They're like, where am I? Like, I'm going to have to land in some farmer's field. My first jump. What did I do wrong? And then it was like, oh, wait a minute. Turn all the way around behind you. Oh, there it is. But anyway, the advanced free fall course was pretty wild thing to do. But that was the way I did it. 13,500 feet, 60 seconds of free fall. And I wish I would have finished it. And because here's the thing, like I at 30, I still had some of that, whatever energy left to do things like that. And if I didn't cement that as something habitually that I did, then it's not going to happen now. And especially now, because flying is, taking all of my time and attention, and most importantly, money.
Yep. One dog geek is asking, did you not have a radio? Yeah. They always gave them one-way radios from the ground to talk to students. Oh
yeah. They yelled at me a lot on that radio. As I came in, I was talking about flaring too high. Also, when you're landing in a parachute, you want to be careful. What I did was I flared too late, which is really dangerous because you kind of pendulum yourself right into the earth if you're not careful. And I had come in and they were yelling at me. I flared a little too late. And then instead of I kind of had a lot of speed coming in, and I was afraid to put my feet down because I thought that I was just going to get just dragged along like a rag doll for a quarter mile. So my instinct was to pick my feet up and almost like sit in the air as I was coming in to kind of just make it as I kind of made the flare. And my instructor yelled at me so bad because that's how people, compress their spinal cords. Yeah. And so, but it was just an instinct. There's so many things like that where I'm like, how did I survive that? I don't know. But I'll do the safe thing. Just fly around in a Cessna for right now.
Yeah, safe is relative, but yeah, I mean, it is definitely safer than I would think jumping out of one.
Well, you definitely learned the slow is fast. You know, that whole idea. You know, you definitely learned that in skydiving, where it's like, if your parachute doesn't open, you know, they say like sort of count to 5 and then go look and see if anything's going on. But when you're falling for the first time, you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're just looking like it's, you know. You learn slow is fast. So I got some good lessons out of it that I think apply to some of the other aviation considerations, but
sure.
Not something I'll do again. Have you ever done it? Do you ever want to do it?
Nope. And no, I don't think so. It just doesn't interest me. Of course, I also never thought I would be interested in, I mean, I always was interested in flying, but I was also pretty scared of the idea. So, you know, I don't know. The whole parachute thing just doesn't appeal to me. The same thing with like base jumping and, you know, bungee jumping and that kind of stuff. It's not really not up my alley.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm not a thrill seeker. I mean, really, I'm really not. And people say, well, you fly low airplanes. So, well, that's not really that. I don't think that's not really that. That's not kind of that adrenaline thing. Like,
yeah. Do you have any interest in doing aerobatics?
Yeah, no, not really. I'm going to with Tyler. Because it's his plane and we'll do it. It'll make a great video. You know, I mean, that'll be some good content.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to do it for the content. I'm going to be it's going to be hilarious. I'm certain. I'll probably do it once and that'll be it. Oh, but I want to.
Okay, well, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for that. So, we can probably wrap this up here now. I appreciate everybody chiming in with their great stories.
Yeah, it was awesome. We'll definitely leave some comments in here, leave some topic ideas if you'd like for future use. I think we can always add them to the database of things we've got planned here coming up. But
yeah, what do you want us to talk about? We'll talk about it.
Yeah, leave them in there. And remember to check for the audio versions. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. And wait, you have to play music going out. I mean, I'm not going to let you go without doing it. In fact, here, I'm going to full screen you. In fact, we're going to play out here, play out with Brian on the way out. You can check out his sick beats, as it were. Geez. Thanks for potting tonight. It was fun.